Hello students, welcome to your World War II test review. As you know, this document is shared with you on Google Drive as well as the complete list of items that you're expected to be prepared for your World War II test, which is coming up soon. Remember, the vocabulary section is on Quizlet, and I'll remind you again at the end. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in and get started. If you see at the top here on each of these slides, I will list kind of the topic that I listed on your review, and then down here I'll have the pictures and just a brief statement of what you're expected to know for the test. So first of all, what was our foreign policy during the early years of World War II? Again, as we have talked about over and over, our policy was to remain neutral. Eventually, we did start making supplies available to Britain. We did that through the Lend-Lease Act, as FDR kind of tried to get around the Neutrality Acts. The first time he did that was with giving supplies and ammunition and arms to China when they were attacked by the Japanese. But our policy was to remain neutral while kind of supporting other countries on the Allies through giving them more aid. Next one, very simple. What was our reason for entering World War II? Simply, finally, we were provoked enough to enter the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Here you see the first attack on Pearl Harbor. Here's the memorial today that we've talked about several times. Next one, what were Stalin's tactics in the Soviet Union to control his people? Several. He used terror, violence, purges. He wanted to intimidate the people. And if you disagreed with him, you could be sent to a work camp. You could be, even worse, you could be killed. But he used terror and violence to intimidate his people. The Axis powers were named because of an alliance between which two capitals and which two countries? Simply Rome and Berlin. Now, Rome, Italy, Berlin, Germany, the two capitals got together. It was called the Rome-Berlin Axis, which gives us the name the Axis powers, which were our enemies during World War II. Which two leaders signed a non-aggression pact in 1939 that really stunned the world, and that was Hitler and Stalin? Now, before this pact, it was thought that they were enemies. Communism and fascism don't mix real well, and these were kind of two rivaling countries. But when they signed this, it really shocked the world and put a lot of fear throughout the globe. Manchuria in 1932, what happened? They were invaded. Right here is Japan. So Japan invaded this part of China known as Manchuria, about the size of Texas. And, that was kind of the start of the aggression in the Pacific. We talked about Nanking and all the terror and horrible things that were done there. But this is Manchuria in 1932. How did Stalin modernize agriculture in the Soviet Union? Remember, he wanted to bring them from being a kind of a backwards rural country to an industrial power, and he did this through his 5-year plans and then combining farms and what they called collectivization, basically placing all farms under government control and using every resource possible, mostly humans, to make sure that they were at full production. Lebensraum. Lebensraum is a German term that Hitler used to describe living space for the German people, and this is kind of how he justified expanding their borders in the beginning in the mid-30s and into the later 30s, just saying that they deserve their Lebensraum, their living space back, and that's when he started. What happened at Dunkirk? Basically, this is known for what became called the Miracle at Dunkirk, which was the rescue of Allied troops from France. When they were backed up, the Germans had pushed them all the way out of their country, and they were able to save over 200,000 troops, one of the greatest rescues in the history of any warfare, not just World War II. So that's at Dunkirk. Battle of Britain. This is kind of the last-ditch effort for the British against the Nazis. The Nazis had defeated France, and this was the battle where the Germans attacked them night after night, non-stop bombing, trying to force a surrender. And this is when, the term and the saying, keep calm and carry on, came around when Winston Churchill just said, we will never surrender no matter what happens. And the Germans finally, stopped their bombing after a couple months. Which country gained control of most of Western Europe by 1940? And of course, that's Germany. World War I, what was the impact on Italy and Germany? The end of World War I, as we talked about, Treaty of Versailles, that left them vulnerable, left their people upset, wanting a new leader, and that gave them kind of an opportunity, Mussolini and Hitler, to start these new governments that, ruled by nationalism and militarism, what we call fascism today. What was Hitler's strategy for invading Poland? He wanted to come in fast, quick, didn't give them time to respond. This was known as Blitzkrieg or Lightning War. Very fast and quick, didn't give your opponent a time to respond. What led the U.S. government to evacuate Japanese Americans from the West Coast? Now, this was long held prejudice against the Japanese, and then when they attacked Pearl Harbor, we placed them in these internment camps for fear of them spying, but really it was pretty harsh treatment and mistreatment of these individuals. U.S. economy emerged from the Depression due to full production, giving everyone jobs, production of war goods, all for the Allies, everybody working together, and that did help us emerge from the Depression. What happened on D-Day? This was August 6th, I believe, 1944. This was the largest amphibious invasion ever in the history of warfare, and this was, a known high casualty affair where we took back Europe from the Axis powers. Began in August of 1944. This is where we watched the start of the movie Saving Private Ryan. Battle of the Bulge. This was at the end of the war, and it was the largest battle fought in Western Europe during the whole war, and this was kind of the last gasp offense for the Germans before we defeated them. What was done with Germany after they surrendered? This was difficult, and it caused us a lot of problems for a number of years after. Germany was divided into 4 parts, governed by the United States, Britain, France, and the USSR. And Berlin was also divided into 4 parts, the Allied side and the Soviet side, or as we know, and we'll talk about the Cold War kind of centered around the Berlin Wall and what was done to Germany after the war. Nuremberg laws were a series of laws passed by the Nazis to strip all Jewish people of their German citizenship and kind of made them non-citizens, and this led to the final solution, which, as we talked about, was the deliberate killing of all people of Jewish descent. Manhattan Project was the goal of the U.S. And the idea of developing an atomic bomb in hopes of deterring anyone from continuing war. We never wanted to use it. We eventually did on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and that's the next topic here. So Hiroshima and Nagasaki simply were the Japanese cities that were bombed by the U.S. And forced a Japanese surrender. President Truman had the difficult task of making this decision. What happened at Coral Sea, Midway, and Guadalcanal? Now these were all battles, U.S. versus Japanese. They were all in the Pacific Ocean, and fortunately, through a lot of bloodshed and a lot of lost lives, the U.S. was able to defeat Japan with the help of these battles. Kamikazes were Japanese pilots who basically went on suicide missions, flew planes loaded with bombs, mainly into our ships, and their aim was just to cause as much death and destruction as possible. What action taken by the U.S. finally ended the war? We kind of already mentioned this. Dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Here's the plane that dropped it, the Enola Gay. And this, was the only time that an atomic bomb has ever been dropped, and let's hope that that continues to be so. That's it. We kind of covered a lot during World War II, but you're kind of just tested on the big ideas and the main ideas. Remember, this document and this presentation is shared with you. You also have the paper review. Quizlet is something you need to look into and check out those vocab terms. Also, the shared presentations that we went through. All your assignments can be used as study tools. As always, if you have questions, come talk to me or email me. Other than that, I think you guys are going to do great. You all seem very interested and pretty well up to date on what we covered in World War II. Other than that, good luck on your tests. Do your best, and we'll see you soon.